Any better, folks? It seems better on my end, but I don't know if that's translating to y'all, so let me know. Yeah, I quit OBS and just relaunched it, so hopefully that's better. Okay, anyway, so, sorry, I was saying. Now that I'm down here in Los Angeles, oh, perfect. Yeah, I think it was something about OBS and my camera, the way they interacted. Awesome, thanks so much, UberQ Funk. So now that I'm down here in Los Angeles, I have much better internet, which makes it a lot easier for me to stream in my apartment as opposed to having to go to campus. Oh, it is perfect, David. I'm so happy that it's perfect. As opposed to having to go to campus to stream like I used to. So I'm going to be trying to do this a lot more regularly every week on Sunday like I used to. And we're going to just kind of bang out the rest of this campaign. Now, for those of you who are joining us for the first time, I am planning on running, once the pandemic lifts, basically our next podcast campaign is a big epic fantasy political intrigue dwarven game, basically inspired by the sort of implied end of The Hobbit, when Thorin and the dwarves come back to Erebor and have to rebuild this kingdom. It's set in on Dune, which is the same setting that I used for All Hell Yogg, and we have just been going week by week through all the world building sort of required to get this big immersive kingdom back on its feet. So today, we're going to be going through and doing some geography. As I mentioned, you might have noticed that I tweeted some maps, kind of big top-down maps I've been making through Incarnate over the past couple of months. I sort of stopped working on those recently because I kind of started to get worried that maybe I wasn't quite ready to do that stuff. You know what I mean? That I wasn't really at the stage where I knew enough about the geography and all the locations that I wanted to have in the game. Obviously, I can always go back and add things to those maps and change them. They're not set in stone, but I sort of wanted a better understanding of all the different pieces before I really kind of put anything to paper. So I ran a Twitter poll this week, and I wanted to post just a couple of different potential topics, one of which was fantastic locations. The map is looking a little blank. Unfortunately, Twitter was not super helpful in deciding what I should do, as we had a three-way tie between three different categories. So I figured we would just start at the top and work our way through, and the first category that was in the three-way tie was this map question. So I have this huge document here, and it has a bunch of different locations on it. Basically, it has a short summary, and then it has little descriptions, three sort of notable things about each location. It might be an adventure hook, it might be a historical point. You know, let me pick an example. Let's say Lake Reflection here. Can y'all see Lake Reflection? Yeah, just a little bit. I'll scoot it up a little. Yeah, my overlay is a little funky because I have to kind of make sure you guys can see what I can see, so I see the full document rather than just the little selection. So for Lake Reflection, it says, an artificial lake created by damming a tributary, which I haven't named yet. Although I actually think I have. I think that's the Queen's Feet River. By damming the Queen's Feet. So there's going to be lots of holes in this document, by the way, so I will probably fill those in as we go. The largest tributary of the many lode, at the foot of the Range of Sovereigns. This creates an incredible vista, the sovereigns reflected in the still water. The Range of Sovereigns is this mountain range that has these giant Rushmore-style or Argonath-style statues studded all throughout them. So that's the summary, and then I have three little points here. We have commissioned by King Hovhead the Hammer. It reflects the visage of Durzov, the first great dwarven king. A means to honor the choice that Hovhead made to lead the Crown Guard to war, which is the army of Khûm. That's one detail. One of them is that a small vista sits on the shores of the lake, where Hovhead reflected and sort of appealed to the ghost of Durzov. When he departed, he commissioned the river dammed to create this great lake that would reflect the statue back. However, it was believed that the lake prevented the souls of the dead from reaching Hall Regi, which basically means the halls of rest, or the great necropolis where all the dwarven souls are interred. Hall Regi. So we're probably going to be doing this a lot, of sort of filling in little gaps. A bridge was eventually constructed to allow the dead to cross, but it's thought that the lake is haunted by the souls of the soldiers killed in the war that Hovhead went to go fight. So there's a lot of history in there, obviously, and these notes are mostly for me, so if they're not super digestible to the layman, that's cool. If you have any questions about any of the stuff or don't understand the reference, obviously feel free to drop it in the chat. But we're just going to kind of go through and either try to fill in gaps where they exist, or just try to brainstorm new ideas in general. Where I wanted to start was down here with caves and caverns, because I feel like for a campaign that is almost as much about the underground as it is about the above ground. There's like a startling lack of cool caves and caverns that I have here on this list. I have a lot of potential dungeon ideas. I have a lot of dwarven holds, which are basically dungeons. I have some forests. I have a lot of mountains, a lot of monuments and things like that, but I don't really have as many cool caves and caverns. So these are specifically like, they can be sort of dwarf-made or man-made, but I would sort of prefer them to be naturally occurring caverns and cave formations. I have 2 big ones right now, but I would love to maybe add 3 more if we can. I mean, as many as we can think of, great, but if you guys have any ideas or suggestions about stuff, let's go through the 2 that we already have. So I have the Glimmer Maze, which is basically this warren of these dangerous caverns that run beneath one of these dwarven holds. I haven't thought of the name of this hold yet, but it's one of the elder clans called Clan Glimmergem. They don't exist anymore. They were eradicated in a civil war, but their sort of mineral of choice is called lusterine, which is this gem that basically, when you gaze at it, it enraptures you and forces you to stare at it, right, when it's unworked. If it's worked, the dwarves can find a way to basically nullify that effect, but it otherwise has this kind of enthralling, enchanting effect that causes you to just stare at it endlessly until the spell is broken. But anyway, so the idea was that underneath their hold was this labyrinth of all of these gems, so it made it very difficult for attackers to get at them. The passages are treacherous to navigate, considering the raw lusterine, and were a natural defense mechanism for Clan Glimmergem. Sort of, I like the idea that it created this kind of aurora borealis effect, right? Painting these beautiful, mesmeric gazes all over the place. That's one fact. Special eyewear, unique goggles that were once made by Clan Glimmergem before they were destroyed, are required to travel the passages safely. And lastly, in ancient times, orcs by the thousands died in the caves, members of the... Oh, we do have a name of this horde. Although I'm changing the name horde, I don't really like it. I want them to come up with an orcish word for it. I think this is the Gurkha horde. Oh, no, it's G, Gurkha. Gurkha horde. We'll just say Gurkha. Members of the Gurkha fighting fiercely against Clan Glimmergem's goggled defenders. So we have a little bit of history, right, here with the sort of in ancient times. We have a little bit of almost like item related, right? Like this is some treasure or some gear they might need if they're going to go to this place. And then we have just kind of a general a train effect about the location. So they don't have to obviously fit that rubric every single time, but I do like each one of these little details to have something that might affect an adventure, right? As opposed to just kind of being a little frippery. So that's one. We have the Glimmer Maze that's underneath the Glimmergem hold. And then, can you guys still see that? Nokori's Fault? Great. So Nokori's Fault, this happened much later in the history, but it's this dreadful mining collapse that exposed a huge section of subterranean caverns that is now honored by a monument to the thousands of miners who died. It's named for the queen, who originally commissioned a sort of a tripartisan mining effort in the area. This was a time when there was this great surplus of minerals and resources. The way Khûm, the kingdom that this campaign takes place in, works is that the gems and minerals and ores and things replenish themselves every year, kind of like a crop. So it allows the dwarves to just kind of endlessly and successfully mine and get sort of like infinitely richer and wealthier off of these supplies. So this was kind of during a boom period when there was tons of excess and tons of excess and surplus minerals. And during that time, the dwarves got extra greedy and they started to mine and mine and mine and mine. They started almost forming these, mining companies to get at this stuff. And that, of course, caused a big sort of BP oil spill style natural disaster that collapsed a huge section of kind of an open area of Khûm and created this massive sort of scar on the land. So we have 3 features here. We have, it is a visible wound on the countryside and is considered sacred ground by all because of the number of miners that died there. Again, it's treated very much like a war monument almost, right? To honor the dead, pillars were constructed, supports that should have existed to hold the ceiling all across the site, with the faces of the dead dwarven miners carved upon each. So a little Game of Thrones, right? If you think about the houses of the Undying, not the Undying, the House of Black and White, right? Where they have all the different faces. But I like the notion of them raising these pillars that don't support anything. They just kind of go up and then stand there, right, over the empty open sky, sort of as a symbol of, what the supports that should have been there just to protect the miners. But because they were so greedy and trying to get as much as they could out of the earth, these pillars now stand here to remind you of what what you should do, sort of for mine safety. And then lastly, we have during the sorrows, the cavern filled with snow raining down. Now its precise location is lost to any and could easily be stumbled upon. So during the Seven Sorrows, which is the event that basically drove all the dwarves from Khûm for about a period of 500 years, there was this endless winter that fell upon the kingdom. So I like the idea that while during the kingdom's normal run, when the kingdom was in its glory days and dwarves were still living there, you could see it. It was this very visible thing. And maybe there were even caretakers who sort of tended to it. When the dwarves all fled, over the years, 500 years, snow would just slowly start to accumulate in there and fill up. So I liked the idea that now it's the kind of thing that maybe a party that's crossing the tundra might just accidentally stumble into Nokori's Fault and discover this great monument. Yeah, so those are the 3 little hits for that. I would love to start thinking of some new caves and cavern ideas. Again, trying to stay kind of as natural as we can. Obviously, if we have some man-made ideas, like I think Nokori's Fault is a good example of kind of blending both, of having it both be natural but also have some kind of man-made effect. I mean, it's almost entirely man-made, I guess. But the notion that it's this cavern, right? It was a mine that collapsed in. So let's see, I'll put cave 1. Oh, let me see, I have to, yeah, there we go. Let me know if you guys have any ideas. Cave number 1. Oh, can you see those? I have to be very careful about where. Yeah, okay, you can see that. I was still trying to figure out where I can, like, allowably be. If I go too far over this way, you can't see me. If I go too far over this way. I kind of have more room this way. Maybe I'll center myself there. Sorry, guys, I'm still trying to figure out the new setup. It's exciting for me because I can actually, stream from my house without having to have any pants on. So that's cave 1, cave 2. If we can think of 3, that would be awesome. But we'll just see what we can come up with. Cave number 3. So the first thing that occurs to me is to do kind of like a water feature, right? We have some underground lakes and things up here in the bodies of water section. We have the Everlake, or the Ezcon. You guys see that? Yeah, great. A large subterranean body of water in eastern Khûm. So it's basically like an underground sea rather than being an underground lake. The dwarves, didn't really encounter the sea until long enough in their existence that they didn't really have a word for it. So they call it the Everlake, right? The Ezcon. And it's got lots of stuff. It's got, an archipelago of islands, and there's a clan that lives out there. There's strange creatures that live down there in Aboleth, right, in the campaign. And I like the idea that the ceiling of that cavern is kind of studded with gemstones that the people who ply the underground sea use like stars, right, to navigate. Rather than being like, we need to head towards Cassiopeia. They're like, oh, okay, I know this constellation, that constellation of gems. So I thought, like, that's the first thing that occurs to me is like an underground river or an underground lake or something like that. But again, I feel like that's more of a body of water than it necessarily is a cavern. So I'm trying to think of like other cave ideas. We have the kind of like twisting tunnels and maze of the Glimmer Maze. We have Nokori's Fault, right, which like collapsed open from above. I'm trying to think of like other styles of cave. There's something interesting about a cave or a cavern, kind of like the Ezcon, where it's like just tremendously big, right? Like Nokori's Fault seems big. I don't think it's large, but it's kind of a drop down. And again, it's largely dwarf made. I like the idea of there being like a huge, like almost like a lacuna or like a gap in the earth somewhere, right? This massive cavern that when you step into it, ooh. Yes, David. That's great. So David in the chat says, something I always find really something I always feel super creeped out by is how gases could be super deadly in caves, like sulfuric acid. So, and I could see dwarves just having a whole cave blocked off for some mysterious danger. I don't want to spoil anybody, but that is not acid, but gas is a huge element in one of the plot lines, basically natural gas. But I love the idea of like an acid cave or an area that's filled with acid. So acid cave blocked off for some reason. Maybe there's like a cave. Yeah, that's cool. So it's filled with sulfuric acid. Filled with sulfuric acid. And what's cool about that idea, David, is that because there's a huge gap, there's this 500-year gap, maybe the dwarves at the time knew, okay, we can't go there, right? Like, this area is blocked off. But after 500 years, you know, does anyone remember, have sort of the defenses that have kept the acid boiled down? Or, you know what I mean? Like, is it still, like, the notion of basically coming to, like, an irradiated site is kind of cool. That's how the dwarves would have treated it. Filled with sulfuric, maybe it's like, that's interesting. I don't really know how acid works. But, like, again, from the fantasy angle of it, like, almost like the idea of the dwarves, like, striking oil or something like that, except instead of oil, it's this sulfuric acid. And so it just starts to, like, flood and fill the corridors and the caverns, and they have to, like, seal it off. That's cool. Filled with sulfuric acid. The dwarves struck. So one funny little thing about the stream is that my I have to have basically the font really tiny for me in order to make it fit on the ooh, it usually forms near volcanic regions. That's great, David, because there's a huge volcano right in the center of the of Khûm. It's like this massive sort of holy site. So I like the idea that maybe a lot of the tunnels and stuff underneath there are filled with it. Ooh, yes, that's great. Okay, the dwarves struck acid while carving out the stoneway. Oh yeah, I should turn on my my spell checker because shows spelling suggestions. Oh, well, you know what? Maybe let's not, because that's going to make everything look weird. So let's turn it off. But I will probably have tons and tons and tons and tons and tons of typos, because as I said, in order to make the font big enough for you guys to see it, it has to be really, really small for me. So I'm kind of like squinting at my computer. So I apologize. Well, carving out the stoneway. So the stoneway is basically like a subway system that they make, right? That goes all across the kingdom. Underneath. Oh, I have the name of the volcano. What is it called? It's like there's a central hub there. What is the name of the volcano? That's monuments. Samadon. I have it. It's somewhere. I'll just put volcano for now, but it does have a cool name. Bring this back up. Make sure y'all can see it. Yeah, cool. It began, and again, I have this rule about things like acid or like black tar or lava that I don't really care about how it works in like actual science, right, in the real world, because I sort of operate under like sort of Hollywood lava rules, right? That like if you're not gonna like, there's nothing that will kill a pulp adventure more than somebody coming in and be like, well, actually, lava, you can't sink into it because it's hard rock, right? Like, that's totally true. And if that's the kind of games you run, great. But I always kind of operate on, like, Indiana Jones logic, right? Like, movie logic for these things. So this might not be the way that acid actually works. And that's cool if that's a deal breaker for you. But for me, you know, I really want to just preserve, like, the coolest possible idea. So I'm going to we'll just kind of make up fantasy acid right now. The chambers began to fill with acid and was thus sealed off. So I love the idea of like a stoneway detour in a certain area near the volcano. Where the acid was contained. Yeah, that's great. So like as these trains would all come in, this is kind of the central hub, right? The Grand Central Station, if you will. So all these trains would come in there and then make their transfers to go to different places. So the idea that there's like they kind of have to go around this irradiated zone that's filled with acid. They've like sealed it in with some kind of an alloy or a metal that basically can't be chewed away, right? Like, so it's, I love the idea of like this big dwarven engineering project. It was probably made during the reign of Kavgra the Great. She was the one that kind of pioneered the stoneway. Yeah. Oh, that's interesting. Natural hot springs also tend to be found near geothermal areas, maybe like a smallish gardens with bathing pools. Could be connected to the acid one or another one. Yeah, I have some hot springs in another part of Khûm, but that's cool. I like the idea that there are maybe like the pools of water that collect around the volcano are sort of like geothermally heated, you know, and the kind of smell of sulfur. Let me look. I see if I can find that central map. I don't think I'll be able to show you guys, but I really want to know the name of the volcano. And there is like there's some like little rivers and tributaries that come off the volcano that has a name. Like I think it's literally called Sulphur Springs. Yeah, it's called Sulphur Springs. Krosvedon is the name of the volcano. Krosvedon. Okay, underneath Krosvedon. Yeah, these are great ideas, guys. Krosvedon. The chamber began to fill with acid and was sealed off. Discovered by Kavgra the Grand. A huge hassle to her. It was a tremendous hassle. There's something kind of interesting, too, about, like, again, going with the fantasy angle, right? Like, it's a little bit more dramatic. It's a little bit more dramatic is right, like fictional. Like maybe there's some implication that it isn't normal acid, right? While contained for now, the miners who maintain the seals speak about how clever the acid is, how it always finds some way to like sneak past their wards, right? Like it's always weakening, like the notion that like it's almost like an ooze or something, right? It's like a little bit too intelligent, it's a little bit too deliberate, it doesn't just flow out like an element. Let me go down to the Krosvedon and A, put that name in, and then B, make a stink about the make a specific point, not make a stink. Krosvedon. So a lot of these are very sloppy down here. I don't know if you can even see that. Put that right there. Hot springs. All around the volcano. Bathing pools that dwarves can access. Yeah, I think that's cool. Open to all. I like the idea that like the bathing pools are less. I mean, I guess that probably actually would be a yeah. Let's put that in water. Sorry, just organizational stuff right now, but I'll put it in Sulphur Springs. The idea that the volcano has all of these little outlets and little tiny, like I think they're called tarns, which are like mountain lakes where there's like a divot or something and then water collects in there. But on Krosvedon, those are all hot springs, right? And so like there are dwarves that they're like, and the dwarves have found little doorways and stuff. Like you can go up through the volcano. The volcano Krosvedon is centered in the middle, and the idea is that like it's this common place for all dwarves to come to. Sulphur Springs. We're off the map a little bit, but I think this is good. Can you see that? Oh, you can't see it. I'll scroll it down. Apologies. Sulphur Springs. There we go. A series of rivers, tributaries, and waterfalls that trickle down Krosvedon's slopes. Sulphur Springs is wild, provides is less one river. Let's say we'll call it a series of streams, and more a river system, and more. Oh yeah, is less one waterway, and more a flowing countryside of geothermally heated water. Many small pools, guys. Sorry about the typos, guys. I'm doing my best. Many small pools dot the slopes of the mountain, of the volcano, providing ideal meeting places for dwarves from every clan. Yeah, I like the image of like a little tiny pool in a little nook, and then there's like a dwarven door that they've made, right, that you can walk out and like hang your towel or do whatever, right? Like, I think that's really cool. Nice job. Great idea. Let's maybe come back to that if we have any more thoughts about Sulphur Springs. But I do have it on the map, so I think that's a great way to think of it. I wasn't imagining doing little hot springs, because I had hot springs somewhere else, so that's cool. Yeah, okay, so the last thing is that, like, after 500 years of neglect, can you see that? Sorry. Yeah, great. 500 years of neglect. The acid has wormed its way from its original holdings and is now spreading along Stoneway. Yeah, that's cool. But it's like eating its way along. Although, is it more interesting to have, what do we think? Is it more interesting if it found its way out? Or is it more interesting if it is like well sealed and it's up to the party to unlock it, right? Like, do they accidentally unleash the thing? I don't know. I'll put it like both as an option. Alternatively, the acid is perfectly contained within, but may accidentally be unleashed by an unknowing party attempting to clear the Stoneway. I kind of think that that's better. Like, I don't mind the idea that, like, once it's unleashed, that it's clever and it can, like, you know, it avoids being captured, it avoids being contained in certain ways, right? That it's almost like an ooze. Yeah, so I'll say while the acid is arrested. I like that idea too, right? Has arrested. A ticking time bomb. Yeah, that, like, it's just a matter of time before somebody opens it. I kind of think that's more interesting. Yeah, has rested, perfectly contained for 500 years. It's only a matter of time before an unknowing party accidentally unleashes it. Because you can see that, like, if there's this big detour in the subway and these dwarves are kind of trying to come in and, like, make things more efficient and reopen, they would think, wait, why is this here? You know, and then they would try to find a way around it. Okay. I think that's great. That's awesome, David. Thanks for the suggestion. Cool, that's 3 little points. So we'll need a name for it, right? Like, because I think it's like a, you know, my instinct is to call it like a zone, you know, like it's kind of like, it has like an Area 51 kind of vibe to it, right? Like it's just rather than having like a name proper, they give it like yeah, there's something kind of cool about that. I think I'd have to look up the Dwarven for it, but calling it like Area 51 essentially, right? Like it's a region, like a spot, like they might have a name for a cave or a cavern in Dwarven, and I like the idea that it was, and they definitely do. I think it's Cov, Cavarn or something like that. I think it's like large cavern, or large cave. But I like the idea that they, like, whoever was building the Stoneway had to have kind of like shorthand names for stuff. So it was just like, you know, cavern. Oh, sorry, there's somebody's burning rubber outside my apartment. I don't know if you can hear that, but it sounds very loud to me. But somebody, you know, they were just naming different caves as they were making the Stoneway. So, you know, there's Cave 1, and then there's Cave... Yeah, a lot of burning rubber outside. I don't know if you guys can hear that. But there's Cave 1, and there's Cave 2, and there's, you know, Cave 3. And then eventually it's like Cave 116, Cave 100, and, you know, Cave 412 or whatever. So I like the idea that its name is just something like that. It's like Cave cave 51, but everybody knows that that's the unlucky cave, right? That's the cave you don't go into, that it's sealed off, that it has some kind of like, hey, what's up, Alan? Yeah, can you guys hear that? There's some bad boys out there for sure. Yeah, I think that that's cool. So I'll have to look at the dwarven to figure out what it would be called. But I do like the idea that it's just like, I'll call it Cavern 51 for right now. But it has, it would even be kind of funny to call it that, but do that in dwarven, right? I forget what 50 is. I have the numbers worked out. But I like the idea of calling it like Cavarn 51 or whatever, Oni 50 or whatever it is. And like the joke is that it's Area 51. Oh, that kind of implies aliens, but maybe that's cool that it like goes against expectation. Okay, well, regardless, that I can do on my own. We don't necessarily have to do that here together. But I would love to think of 2 more cool cave ideas. So the first one we did was the acid cave, which was David's suggestion. I think is really cool. The idea of this like semi-intelligent acid that's contained in this sealed off area. We have Nikori's Fault, right? The big like collapse. And then we have the Glimmer Maze, which is like the labyrinth of Aurora Borealis style gems and things that can kind of hypnotize you. So we were talking before about the idea of a cave that was so big and massive that they well, they're not traps, Alan. They're just kind of like natural caverns. So what we're working on is geography. We're trying to figure out like just some cool landmarks and things that I can put on these maps. And I realized that I only had 2 cool caves in my largely underground dwarven campaign. So I'm trying to think of some other cool cave ideas and caverns and things like that, sort of naturally formed potentially. They can be like partially man-made in some cases. I'm almost a fan of the secret tunnel from Avatar: The Last Airbender with the shifting tunnels too. Yeah, boy, bad boys. What's going on out there tonight? This is kind of what it's like to live by a big street, a busy street like this. Shifting tunnels, secret tunnels. It's cool. I'm trying to think of the context. You know what I mean? We have the Stoneway, and one part of the Stoneway is sort of that like everyone has access to it. Like they made this very public, just all kinds of drag racing happening outside. They made this very public sort of subway system that goes around the whole kingdom, but every dwarf then like makes their own tunnels to the Stoneway that are then hidden from everybody else. Like every hold can get to the Stoneway like terminal without anyone else knowing where their doors are. A cave that's a perfect loop. Oh, like it naturally forms like a weird ring. That's kind of cool. That was kind of what I was thinking in terms of like, is there a cave that's somehow geometrically weird? You know what I mean? Like it's a perfect sphere or something, you know, and nobody knows exactly why it's that. It has kind of a sci-fi sort of a tone to it. Like, what happened here? Why did this, you know, they stumble on it and it's this like exactly. Ooh. Okay, so 2 ideas. So like geometrically strange cave. So I mentioned this before, Alan, but I can't really see what I'm typing because it has to be really tiny for me to make the overlay work. So there's going to be a lot of typos, and I apologize. Geometrically strange cave, perfect loop, perfect sphere, like a square pyramid, yeah, like inverted pyramid, something like that doesn't have an obvious how did this occur, and they probably have some divine explanation for it, and we don't know if that's true or not. Yeah, it's a giant D20, right? What is the term for that? A 12-sided die is a dodecahedron. That I remember, but I forget. Oh, thanks, man. Yeah, I put a little time in it. I think it looks cool. I'm still worried that the picture above me looks a little bit too much like Optimus Prime. But maybe I shouldn't have said that because now you can't get that out of your head. I'll probably get an actual professional design a logo when we get closer to the campaign. But I wanted something up there. I was putting text on it, didn't look as cool, so I went with a little like a little icon that I designed. So yeah, something funky, right? Some kind of geometric weirdness. Oh, okay, thanks. It's a icosahedron. Oh wow, that's a crazy one. Icosahedron. So something geometrically strange is cool. But I was also thinking, oh god, I had it. Oh yeah. So an adamantine cave. So the way adamant works in on Dune in my world, icosahedron, inverted pyramid, icosahedron. The way that adamant works on Dune, and this is actually Alan's idea from a really early stream that we had, was, I wanted a place for mithril and I wanted a place for adamant. I wanted a place for kind of like the fantasy metals, right? And the notion with adamant is that it's the one mineral, like one ore, that they can't shape, that none of their tools work on it, right? Like they can't find a way to, like you can't make armor out of it, you can't smelt it, heating it does nothing. No tool that they have is strong enough to, like, what is going on? I think they're just like racing each other around San Vicente. It's heinous. But no tool that the dwarves have is sufficient to the task of actually working adamant. So what happens though is that they find it in these big deposits, right? Like these big lumpy, they can be small deposits, little flecks, or you can find them in these big, almost like monuments underground. And the idea is that, like, that's a huge like boon to the dwarves, right? When they finding that is this like great like discovery of religious significance. So the idea of a cave that's like made from adamant, right? That there's like a naturally occurring hole in it, and then you go inside of it, and you can't mine it, you can't do anything about it. So it almost feels like it becomes like a museum piece or something like that, right? Could be kind of cool. So that's intriguing to me. I don't know where or why or what it would do besides just be cool. So it's an option. I don't know that it's necessarily like that interesting on its own. Let's talk about the geometrically strange cave. So having it be a dice like shape, like a polygon, is kind of interesting. I worry that it doesn't have the kind of like awe factor of something a little bit cleaner or easier to understand. And like what is the implication of it being an icosahedron, right? Caves 2 and 3 together, a big deposit of adamant. That's a big blob from the outside. Yeah, I was kind of thinking that. I was kind of thinking maybe the geometric one is formed of adamant, right? Yeah, I think that's cool. A geometrically impossible cave made entirely from adamant. Is there a way in? Like, is there like an entrance? Because I guess that would lend some credence to the idea that it is an icosahedron, because then if you look at like a D20 here, I'll grab this. This is a candle actually that I was given by a fan, a guy who makes candles. You can check them out at Spirit of the Wilds. They're very great. So if this is let me put it in the shot. The camera's messing me up. So this is the hole, right? Like if it is an icosahedron, then like one of these triangles could just be open with the intention that you go inside of it, which is cool because then it feels very, very intentional, like someone put it there. But it's also kind of cool if it's not that, right? Like they've shaped it out, like they've carved all around it and discovered that it's this like perfect icosahedron of adamant and why, and there's no way in, right? Like they've like you bang on it and it's determined to be hollow, but you can't enter it. There's no doorway, and because you can't work the adamant, there's no way inside. I kind of think that's cooler, right? That like who's in there, what's in there, why does it exist? Yeah, so maybe there's no entrance. I still think it being an icosahedron is cool, right? Because it seems a little bit more deliberate than like a sphere. I think it was just a cavity. A sphere is kind of cooler because it kind of implies like a nuke went off or something. Alan, it makes me think about Deep Rock Galactic, right? I don't know if you guys have ever played Deep Rock Galactic, but it's this great game. Yeah, you play as a dwarf. Ooh, it's cracked by some force the dwarves can't match. Like something damaged it and they don't know what. That's cool. Maybe it's cracked, but they can't get in it. I still think it's cool if they can't enter it and they don't know what its purpose is, right? Although if there is like a crack, and the implication that something escaped it, right? That something was in there and then it was cracked from the inside like an egg, and then something came out. I don't know. They're all cool. Okay, so let me get the basic idea down. Made entirely from adamant. Adamant. Shaped like an... Look at this word I know now. God, these typos, you guys, they're heinous. Sorry. Shaped like an icosahedron? Icosahedron? 20-sided polygon. 20-sided polygon. The dwarves discovered it whole or cracked. Yeah, that's cool, UberQ Funk, that it's like that there's something in it and they can kind of tell, like a high perception can detect that something's in there, but it's mostly hollow, right? Yeah, that's cool. Okay. And too perfect. When knocked on, the shape resounds like it's hollow, but a keen ear can detect the presence of something, of an unknown something inside the cavity. Yeah, that's great. I think the crack is cool. I think there's like a crack on one side of it. Do we think it's cooler if the crack is outside or inside? I don't know. Yeah, I've never seen the Abyss. Is that in the Abyss? I know there's like weird fish people in the Abyss, right? Yeah, I've never seen it. Is it that one or is it the Descent? Everyone says it's like really terrifying. I think it might be the Descent is the really scary one. Is the Abyss kind of silly or is the Abyss scary? The Abyss is the one where he like almost drowned a bunch of his actors, right? Isn't that one that's like mostly underwater? Sorry, but that's neither here nor there. So I like the idea of the crack, Alan. I think that's really cool. I don't think it punctures all the way through, but I do think it damages the adamant like in a way that they've never seen, right? They've never seen anything that can actually do damage to the adamant. The question is did the crack come from the inside or the outside? I mean, I guess it would have to be on the outside if they saw it. And that kind of works better with some of the mythological stuff in on Dune. If I don't want to go this far. Sphere. Oh, okay. I've not seen it. If the implication is that that something tried to get at it, right? Yeah. That's funny that Samuel L's in that because he's also in Deep Blue Sea, which is another like movie about being underwater. There's a tremendous crack on the adamant, suggesting that something the dwarves cannot comprehend attempted to break their way into the shape, into the shell, break their way through the shell. Yeah, that's cool. You guys, they're really cool out there. The dick on these guys, you wouldn't believe it. Why is it so loud right now? It was quiet all day. And then right now, right when I start to stream, here they go. What is going on? Can you guys hear that? Stupid. So we need one more little detail. To me, it seems like it's got to be something about like where it's located. You know what I mean? Like it can't just be nowhere. Is there some other thing? We can also come back to it if we have a different idea for another cave. But I think it's fascinating, right? What's crazy about this is that like I don't know what it is. I don't know what's in there. You know what I mean? And I'm worried that like by introducing this and then just like never solving it. I mean, I guess the question is like if I introduce it in the game, go to the window. Is it you, Alan? Are you out there? It's just like all kinds of nastiness. I must be a NASCAR track, you guys. I think it's like auditions. There's a window right here. I don't know what's now. It's silent, of course. The minute I go and look. Fear of awe that something could control this amount of power. Yeah. So that's my question. If I put it in the game and I don't know what's in there, which like I think is more interesting than ever answering, is that just gonna be a disappointment, right? They're gonna get to it and be like, oh, what is it? And then I never tell them the truth, or never because I don't know the answer. I think maybe it's one of those things that if somebody really takes an interest in it and wants to look up more about it and do more research and try to solve it, then I think I can try to figure out what it might mean, right? But it's just Alan outside with the boombox over his head and it's really loud car noises. Oh man, I love it. They're back. They're back. Okay, so let's see. Wind is cracking the adamant. Let's think of another. Like, I want to put something about its location. That might be something I need to do on my own, just because I have a better understanding of Khûm and its geography, its location. And I can come back to that. So I'd love to get one more idea for a cave. So we have. So I'd like something naturally occurring that doesn't have that either the dwarves didn't design or that isn't like super weird or strange, like the geometrically impossible cave. But what could we be? So I talked about the idea of a really big, like a massive one, like a humongous, again, kind of like a huge cavity in the earth that's, you know, almost as big as like a Trog Hive for sure. That exists somewhere else. They've taken over another location, but that's a great suggestion. I think those are pretty common little like nests. A myconid thing, could be myconids. An underground jungle. Yeah, this is basically the Underdark, Uberq, what we're talking about right now. The Underdark exists as all of these interconnected things. Basically, my idea with the Underdark was that, what is going on? Infuriating. My idea with the Underdark is that, like, it doesn't exist broadly in the world because it's, I don't know, I find it to be weird that every single D&D world has this thing, this, like, interconnected series of caves, but that this part of the world where the dwarves are from has a lot of caves, partially because they've been doing their mining, but it's the dwarves that are actually using the stoneway that interconnected all the different, cave systems. So that's why it's kind of one big network, because of the dwarves actually doing it. We have a couple of good ideas here. The Trog Hive I have covered somewhere else, but there could definitely be small ones. But I think those two ideas are great. So I think the metal is perfect. So that actually works great because we have. Well, I like the myconid one. I think like an underground jungle myconid, like sort of home colony. Like, where did the myconids first start from? And then lodestone cavern. Yes, that's exactly right, Uberq. Oh, that's cool. It pulses like a heart. So the idea here, we can talk about both these. You guys are kind of on the lodestone one. So lodestone, the way let's go back. Each one of the major dwarven clans, one of the elder clans, has found and monopolized. Oh, am I? Thank you. Good to know. There we go. Yeah, please holler at me if I do that. I'm trying to keep an eye on it, but it's easy to have it get out of my view. Each one of the elder clans has a sort of like unique metal that they have a monopoly on. It's always like a magical metal. You know, they believe the gods gave it to them, that kind of stuff. And one of the clans has lodestone, has like a magnetically charged metal that they can use. In war, they use it to like sync their shields together. So I like the idea that this is kind of they're called clan lodestone. I like the idea that this is kind of the equivalent of the Glimmer Maze, which if you look up here, we have, right, that there's like a natural defense underneath one of their holds that has this like enchanting Aurora Borealis effect, right? That there's like a similar vibe here where there's all the lodestone deposits underneath the mountain that I think their place is called Threshold. Underneath Threshold is you know, does this weird stuff with metal, right? So that's great. Cavern system. I want to come back to the myconids too. That's really good as well. Cavern, come on. Cavern system located beneath, and I'll clean these up and make them look nicer. Beneath threshold. These caves are riddled with lodestone deposits that wreak havoc on metal brought inside. Yeah, that's cool. Brought within. Too close. The lodestone seemingly of its own power pulses like a heartbeat and threatens to disarm, or I think even or even like contort metal weapons, or contort metal weapons and armor in the radius, right? That like the closer you kind of get to the center of it, the power grows stronger the closer one comes to its epicenter. That's another thing. So it feels like, so if lodestone is their primary mineral, like their kind of unique mineral, why didn't they mine this? It sort of feels like the same as the lustrine thing, right? They're going to be golems or warforged who were lured there. Oh, that's cool. Yeah. Golems, like iron golems. Yeah, during the sorrows. Golems, iron golems from the region. So there's a nearby clan that actually makes golems, so that totally works out. From the region, we're drawn to the area. And are now affixed in certain locations. So I could see there being like they're stuck, or they're like a crust, right? Like, yeah, you could do some comic relief with it. I also like that maybe they had like messages to deliver, or they get caught there, or like, you know, I can see a number of plots. That's cool. We would need some kind of a name, obviously, for these. So if you have an idea for, yeah, what do we want to call the geometrically impossible cave? I don't think they would call it like the icosahedron. I think is a little too academic for them. I mean, the dwarves basically invented advanced math and geometry, so that's not ridiculous. Icosahedron actually kind of sounds dwarven to me. Icosahedron. I kind of wanted a little simpler though. Hedron. Is that right? Icosahedron? Yeah. Like calling it the polygon's weird. They don't have a... It's stuck to the ceiling by his breastplate. Yeah, that's great. And maybe a dwarven warrior. Because you could do a thing where like there's some that are skeletons, right, and like stuck there, but there's like one who's alive, like looking at the other skeletons and like, ah, right, like, you know, that feels very silly. That's great. Okay, so let's talk about this myconid home colony for a second. So like an underground jungle. I have some stuff about myconids somewhere. An underground jungle. Oh yeah, kind of the way I do myconids is that they are less mushroom like people and more just like sentient mushrooms, kind of like cordyceps, that they give out the spores and then you breathe them in and then they can mind control you, and then when you die, you know, mushrooms like grow out of your body, and then that's what kind of a myconid is. So they're not malevolent. They're not necessarily like out to kill you, or they're not evil, but they do want, it's kind of a Borg sort of a vibe, but a little bit less evil. An underground mushroom jungle. This is where the myconids first arose in numbers. It's presumably located somewhere near like a volcano, like sort of an heated, steamy, right? One of Khûm's volcanoes. The cavern system is warm and steamy and like semi-tropical, right? Like if it's a jungle and there's all these mushrooms, right? It's that like dark and warm condition, dark and warm and wet. These conditions you want for mushrooms. So one thing, obviously, like enormous mushrooms, as tall as trees. That and I think you can find like groves of these, you know, of weird mushrooms all over the sort of Underdark of Khûm, but I think this is like where they sort of originated. This is where the concentration of it, and then it spread from here, right? That loom over humanoids. Let's see. I almost want to look up my myconids real quick. Sorry, this is gonna mess up your view, everybody. Oh, you're seeing the secrets. Whoa. Sorry, everybody. This will just take a second. But I want to look up what I have, because I wrote a bunch of information about myconids, although I don't know if I've like processed it properly. Monsters of Khûm. I think you were here for the myconid discussion, Allied. I know you like, you know, shrooms and psychedelics. But I think the idea was basically just that, like, they are too concerned with sort of the hive mind stuff, right? Like, again, I like them being kind of friendly and helpful, but ultimately they want you to assimilate. You know, they're not sort of traditionally evil, but they're also not traditionally good either, right? Like they have kind of an alien intelligence. Sorry guys, scrolling through all my stuff about monsters. This is actually one of the categories I have the most fun with, is like taking monsters that already exist in D&D and kind of like retooling them and finding a way to make them work. Here we go. Peaceful. That's the thing about them, is that they're non-violent. They never attack you or hurt you. Let's go to like 75 and see if y'all can see that. You see that okay? No, not really. I'll go to 60. Sorry, everybody. I'm sure this is fascinating. But if we're going to do myconids, I want to make sure that we're being consistent. Okay, there we go. Myconid is a term for an awakened mushroom, that all myconids will be mushrooms that have shared consciousness with another myconid. Different species and sizes. Ents for mushrooms, right? Shepherds who herd and grow giant mushrooms in the Underdark. They unnerve and unsettle dwarves. Dwarves fear them and consider them strange or unnatural. I'll bring it down a little bit. They consider myconids to be bad eating and worry about becoming infected. Eating a myconid grants you visions of the colony, right? Goal, to spread their consciousness, to awaken all mushrooms. They infect dead bodies and animate them to serve their purposes, to carry more spores. Yeah, okay. Going back thousands of years, myconid mythology stands at odds with every other race's understanding of the world. They blossomed during this time, feeding on the death and destruction of the Stoneways. So it sounds like they don't like, I don't know. Because I kind of like the idea that you can't become, like, infected without your, like, consent. You know? There's something interesting to me about that it has to be voluntary. Because if they're just like, we take you over, then they're just the Borg, and that already exists, you know? But anyway, that might not be super irrelevant here. I'm just trying to make sure I remember what we said about myconids. So it's a huge cavern. It's full of mushrooms. You know, spores kind of drift around. Spores drift through the air. I like that idea too, that it's kind of getting like a contact high, right? Like as you move through it, granting bizarre visions of your own past, but also the psychedelic history of the myconids. I think myconids are very like creatures of the mind, almost like they exist sort of in the plane of dreams. Like they are here, obviously, in the real world, but they are vastly more like conscious in like this other like realm of existence than they are in the physical world, right? Like it's kind of like the astral plane or something like that, right? They kind of like they see epochs and eons and strange universes and colors, right? You have to have eaten some of one, like vampire. Yeah, I kind of think that's right. I kind of think you have to willingly do it. So I think there are like creatures and animals and stuff. Do you have to be sentient? I kind of think you have to be sentient too. Hey, buddy. Yeah, like, and I like that. Like, yeah, they might not tell you everything about what it means to eat a mushroom, but there's this like, you know, the cautionary tale is if you're in the Underdark, and you're starving and you eat a mushroom, right? Be careful. Like it's this bargain. Like don't eat strange mushrooms because they might be myconids. It's not that they're afraid that they're poisonous. It's that they're afraid that they're, you know, gonna corrupt your mind. Yeah, I think that's cool. But I think the spores that drift around, they can like go into you and they communicate that way and they can show you things, but they can't turn you, right? Like you can breathe in the spores and it doesn't really have an actual effect on you. You might see something, but it's always temporary. So myconid sovereign, right? I think we might do one of those beholder things. Is the home of the myconid sovereign. What is it like? I'm kind of imagining it as like the elder brain, but for myconids. Like, what is it? Is it just like a big toadstool? Like, what is the appearance here? You know, what are we having it look like? Because yeah, the idea of there being like the obvious thing is like a big grand central mushroom or whatever. How do the myconids feel about people coming there? Like presumably they like it. Presumably they invite people to come, or not invite, but they like welcome people who come to the grove, right, to the forest. I don't know, because there are dangers. Like troglodytes exist, right, and are kind of hostile to myconids. Although, are they? Like, myconids are basically dead. I mean, troglodytes, I think, are supposed to be hostile to all forms of life. So, yeah, they're probably not too chill with myconids. So, do they have like borders? Like, can you come in? What do they do about troglodytes? An old skeleton. Oh yeah, it's like the first person that was infected. That's kind of neat. Yeah, he's not a huge mushroom. I think he's just like the original. Yeah. The original dwarf, or whatever he is, right? The original skeleton that was infected and began the spread of the myconids. Because I kind of like the idea that the first myconid was basically just like a mushroom that achieved sentience, that had been there long enough that it. But maybe it had something to do with like somebody eating a mushroom and then the myconid like getting into the brainstem or something of the person that ate it, and that's how it got sentience. So yeah, it's just like the original skeleton of this like lost traveler, right? Who ate these mushrooms, and then the myconids got into his brainstem and granted them sentience. I kind of think that's cool. Yeah, and I think that's fine for now. You know, we can deal with some of the other stuff, like how they interact with the world and troglodytes and stuff, and in a future date. So we need names for these places. I don't really want to do names right now. Names are so onerous. If any names jump out, or you guys have any ideas, go ahead and hit me up. But I think we might move on. So yeah, that gives us 6 cool caves and caverns. I think we can think of some more in a future date potentially, but for now, I feel pretty strong about that. So it's 7:15 here, which means I got about 45 more minutes. So I bet we can get some more cool stuff done. I've done dungeons pretty well. I was kind of working on dwarven holds. Most of these are pretty good. Let's see, what do I want to work on next? Let's maybe skip Dwarven Holds for the moment. Forests and Plains I've done pretty well. Monuments and Wonders. I don't know. I'm kind of still in a cave mood, you guys. What if we did a few more caves? I kind of think caves are neat. We need more. I wouldn't mind having 10 caves, maybe. Yeah. Let's do more caves. What's funny is that none of these are going to appear on the on the map. I was like, I got to make sure the map looks good. And then these are all caves. Caves. Or how about we do mountains? Let's do mountains. I have a lot of mountains, but I want a big list. I want tons of mountain ideas. So let's go do mountains. Okay, so I have a lot of these. I'll kind of bust through them as quickly as I can, so we don't have to spend a lot of time on them. So we have the cloud peaks. Actually, I've changed these. These are now called the roof beams. And it's the peaks of the tallest mountains. Ooh, a fossil cave. You would rather do more caves than mountains, Alan? If you guys have ideas for caves, throw them in there. A fossil cave is cool. I think that would be also kind of in the eastern part. Cave number 5, fossils. Yeah, if you have cave ideas, throw them out. I'll add them. I'm gonna move on to mountains, but throw out cave ideas because those are always great. I think I want to do mountains because that's actually something that will appear on the map. Let's do mountains. Cool. So roof beams. Oh yeah, there's usually a little delay between chat and me, so I apologize. Thanks for your forbearance, everybody. Okay, let's see. I gotta get some better lights in here, right? Like the light that's over my head is kind of shoddy. Not a big fan of it. Get rid of this. Okay, so we have the roof beams. They form kind of the northwestern border. So I pretty much have all the ranges that I need. But the interesting thing about these is that they're basically like a they have little deposits of what are called wing rock, which is like a rock, an ore that basically lifts. It's like anti-grav rock, right? So it lifts the peaks of these mountains up off of their base. So if you see them from a distance, like the peaks are floating because there's tiny deposits of wing rock that boost it up. There's a mountain called Cloven Crag, which is basically a pair of mountain peaks, but the kind of Paul Bunyan-esque myth is that it was split in half by the first king of Khûm, Durzov the Dubious. There's a mountain that's in the cloud peaks. This would be a collapsed roof beam, presumably. Roof beam. It's a mountain where there's too much of the wing rock was taken out, and then it crashed down onto a dwarven, dwarven, like, hold underneath the floating peak. A warning not to get too greedy, right? This one I have a name for. It's like somebody's window, but the idea was it's like a mountain with a gigantic hole punched through it. That one I've got. I forget the name of the window. Yeah, it's called the window. Yep, it's in the phalanx. The flying castle dock, I think I'm going to call High Anchorage. There's a flying castle that zips around. And there's basically a spot where the castle docks, and it's these like dwarven statues holding up, and the castle comes and sits down. The Rock might potentially live there. Not Dwayne Johnson, but like without a K. I think karst mountains are really cool if you've ever seen those. They're kind of those like Chinese style mountains where they're like Avatar, the stupid James Cameron movie, had a bunch of these where they're kind of these like really vertical, like almost stacks of mountains, and you usually see the little like acacia trees or whatever jutting out the side of those. I think those are neat. We have a range called the Phalanx, which is a long straight mountain range at the southern border. The Range of Sovereigns is this name. I changed it from Kings. It's an internal range of mountains, and it's studded with enormous statues of dwarven monarchs. There's one small range called the Three Shields, and there's like the smallest one is called the Buckler, and the tallest one is called the Tower, and then there's one with a bunch of waterfalls that freezes in the winter, and that's called the Mirror Shield. Krosvedon we talked about, which is the volcano at the exact center of Khûm. It's got a lot of history to it, but it's pretty well developed. Hope you guys can't see that. There we go. And then Zamadon, called the Secret Mountain, is the mountain where Umbor first saw Khûm. It's kind of where the dwarven dead go to. It's kind of the holy mountain, the birthplace of the dwarven people. And that's kind of where they believe their Valhalla is hidden there. So let's think of some, those are all of the mountain ideas I have. I probably have a few more that I haven't actually put in there yet, but let's try to think of a few more cool mountain ideas. I liked the idea of a mountain, like you have to do, like obligatorily you have to do a Karadras, like a sentient mountain. You know, maybe it's not actually sentient, but nobody really knows. And the stories are that it's old and cranky mountain that constantly throws storms and avalanches down on its anyone who tries to climb it. Storms and avalanches down on anyone who dares climb its slopes. You know, that's like a, that's some Lord of the Rings shit. You have to have some version of it. It'd be cool to figure out, like, oh, you can't see that either. It'd be cool to think of, like, what is the, let me get this set up that way, everything we do, you guys like that. Could they have flipped a peak to make a meeting place? Oh. That's cool. Anti-grav rock have an orientation, or could they have flipped a peak to have made a meeting place? Yeah. Huh. I'm trying to envision that. There's like one of the peaks is upside down. There is in one of the floating peaks there's like a someone has built a tower on the underside of it, you know, like magically, like a wizard. A wizard did it, built the tower on the underside of one of these peaks, but the idea they flipped one and then made like a flat plane, that's pretty cool. Let me put that up here under the roof beams. That's nice. Roof beams. So an inverted peak where something is constructed atop the flat piece. Yeah, up its flat bottom. That's interesting. I don't know what that would be, but it's fascinating. Okay, cool. David says a mountain old rulers would go up to for wisdom. That's kind of neat. It's kind of a Burkhan Khaldun thing, if you know anything about Mongolian mythology. A wise mountain. There's a lot of like mountains that are spiritually significant to the dwarves. So I'm trying to think of like if it is one of those already, and we just like adhere it to that, right? Like this idea that they climb them. So the True Silverhold has it's called True Throne, has basically its peak has been carved into a throne, and the idea is that like they go up there to sit and to gaze out across their kingdom. But I do like the idea of a mountain that is not shaped and is not meant to be the dwarves didn't work on it all, but that the point is that you climb it, right? That like it's meant to be like a spiritual journey to climb the mountain. Yeah. And maybe the point is that if you're a ruler, you're supposed to do it at least once in your life, right? A mountain, an unshaped mountain, whom legend says will grant you wisdom, yep, if you climb to its peak. And like the whole point is that the dwarves could make it easier, right? They could design stairs, they could carve into the mountain, but they don't, because it kind of like, and I don't think it has like huge religious significance. I don't think it's a thing where like, this was the mountain that the gods told us to climb. I think it's just a folkloric thing that like at one point somebody, some thane, climbed this mountain to find peace and solitude, and then came back down and had solved some crisis. And so then the myth became the act of climbing the mountain like taught him what he needed to know, or taught them what they needed to know, right? An old folktale about a thane who reached enlightenment. That's great, David. By climbing this particular mountain. Yeah, I like the idea of a rainbow mountain, Alan. I feel like that would have something to do with a waterfall or something like that, right? A mountain for every stat. A strength mountain, a dexterity mountain, a charisma mountain. It's just the sexiest mountain. I'm trying to think about what the rainbow, how that would work, right? Like it would need to have like persistent waterfall, right, going off of it, and then the sun hits it in a certain way. I feel like we kind of have that in a few, not a rainbow, but we have a couple waterfall mountains, so I'm a little hesitant to do like yet another one. But we could, like, I'm trying to think of the what makes it cool. The idea of it going around is interesting, but like how would that would work? Maybe the conceit is that like it's waterfalls on all sides. I think that's probably something we attach to, because yeah, that will work. If it's waterfalls on all sides, then like no matter where the sun is, you know, you get that effect. Oh, we have that already, actually. Yeah, one of the dwarven holds has basically that incorporated into it. Mistmont. It's not well described here, but yeah, here it is. Iron Spring Stead is like Henethon Noon, where light falls through waterfalls, painting rainbows across the stead at different times. Yeah. We didn't use the word stead anymore. Like, I've never seen Mushishi, the rainbow that was trapped. Interesting. That feels very yeah, mythological, right? Okay. Other mountain ideas. Wise mountain, a sentient mountain. A mountain. No, the rainbows. Yeah, that has like a huge. That feels so like Japanese mythology to me. Like not in a bad way. Like that's cool. Has like a. That feels very like it's about Shinto and kami. Like it seems to be something that would be in a Miyazaki film, right? It has that kind of tenor. I don't know if that's quite right for the tone here, though. Is there something like that feels a little bit more like grounded? You know, the dwarves aren't really about rainbows and stuff. Maybe that's what's cool about it, that it's not very dwarven. Boy, this is so hard. I just like the idea that the dwarves would like personify in some small way every single mountain, right? Like I'm not going to obviously do that, but I want to have like a big list of mountain traits and mountain ideas for different regions, so that way if it's like, okay, we're going to camp on this mountain and we're going to go here, like there might be something they would learn, or there might be a thing, right? What about a mountain? It's kind of a caves thing too, but a mountain, like a singing mountain. Ooh, a couple different things are cool about that. That might be two different ideas. A mountain valley that stretches down. We kind of have this in Echodale, but I think it's something similar. Valley that perfectly captures your voice when sung or shouted from a particular ledge. You know, kind of like yodeling. It's like a perfect yodeling mountain, like a ledge that like, and like the way the valley below kind of scoops the sound of like two smaller mountains, it makes this like perfect, you know, acoustic for yodeling. You know, like it's like that thing when you go hiking in a national park and every little mountain has its own little like peculiar quirk or whatever, right? Like I definitely want ooh, that's cool. Mount Ararat in Turkey is where Noah's Ark was supposed to have run aground. A boat. A boat. I think that could be cool in a different part of the world, but I feel like whose boat is that? But is there something like that? Is there some like ancient legend or myth that like they say, kind of like Cloven Crag, right? Like the mountain that Paul Bunyan split in half, right? Like they say this mountain is where blank happened. Oh, I had this is another, it's kind of like the Wisdom Mountain. But what about a mountain where, like Old Master Mountain? So, way back when we were talking about dwarven aging and how it works, there was this idea that like dwarves don't die of old age. They die when they have like completed their sort of masterwork. Which means that like dwarves can live to be much longer than it says in the player's handbook. or sometimes even longer than elves, depending. The idea is that like if they don't feel like their work is done, they don't die. The older they get, the more like simple-minded they become. It basically is like dwarven dementia. They get really fixated on their one task and they have to try to accomplish it. And then once they do accomplish it, they die, right? So, and most dwarves, you know, do it within the reasonable dwarven lifespan. So the average dwarven lifespan is still around 500 years old, right? But there are extreme cases of dwarves who completed their life's work when they were much younger and die when they were much younger, and then cases of dwarves who, you know, never finish their life's work. And so like the typical, like the myth about that is that there's this one mountain where a dwarf went up to try to finish something they'd been working on, right? Like, and I think it's something really simple in the story, right? It's like a fire poker or something, like some really crude instrument, and they kept getting bothered by where they were and they weren't getting it right because there was too many people around. So the dwarf like went up on the mountaintop and started to work on it and has been up there ever since. And every day, you know, they're still there because there's a little flash from their forge you can see, right? Like from their furnace. So I think it's like that mountain is definitely one that, again, it has like a little local story about it, right? This is that thing about this area where and you know, it's called the Old Master, where the Old Master works every day to perfect their masterwork. Visible by the tiny orange glow of their furnace at work all day. Yeah, the crazy horse, for sure. I like that. What if it was a stone boat that some dwarves built to survive the lava flow of the volcano? Huh. That's kind of interesting. And it's stuck on a mountaintop? I don't know if geographically that quite works, but like, that's an interesting idea. Boat. Boat. Let's put mountain with a boat and with a ship impaled on it. It's a classic. I think it's cool. I don't know if I want to spend it here in this campaign. Mountain with a ship impaled. Welcome, by the way, Christopher. Thanks for coming. Oh, hey, is you that guy that was talking to me on Twitter? Because if you are, welcome. I'm really glad you made it here. Let's see. What's some of the like cool folklore or like weird geography about some of these mountains, right? Oh yeah, I wanted to do like it's kind of a what was I gonna say? Kind of a monument, but like the mountain with the endless stare. I liked the idea, like endless stare mountain. A staircase that climbs from the bottom, from the foot of a mountain, from the foot of a mountain all the way to the peak. No, welcome, man. I'm so happy to have you. All the way to the peak for no reason. Like, it's there, nobody knows who. Oh, thank you. Is that better? Awesome. A staircase that climbs from the foot of a mountain all the way up to the peak for no reason. It's this like endless stair that it takes forever for you to climb all the way up to it, but it's not clear. Maybe it was, again, kind of a masterwork thing. It was somebody's project to do it, but it's nobody knows why it's there. It just is. There's just a staircase, and it goes all the way up, and it's like, you know, they call it the 10,000 stairs or something like that, right? Like, so there's one mountain that's like typified by this staircase that like works its way up. You know, there, and the staircases that go up mountains in Khûm aren't unusual, but there's almost always like to a watchtower or to a mine entrance. This is a staircase that just goes up there, and you know, it just terminates at the peak, and yep, it's not clear what it's there for. I mean, you could make it even more fantastical that like you never reach the top. You know, like you keep climbing up more and more stairs, and for some reason, yeah, that's interesting. The stairs visibly go to the peak, but climbing them never actually gets you there. You keep turning corners and climbing, but for whatever reason, you never reach the top. And again, it's like a local folklore. Like, I like the idea that the dwarves that live in the area say, like, yeah, good luck, good luck climbing those. Also, you know, why don't you climb to the peak and be back for dinner? And they just never make it, right? Like, you know, it's no one. It seems weird and scary almost, but it's just become local folklore to these dwarves, right? It's not that scary. Oh, that's kind of cool though. It looks as if the last step still goes on. That's also cool. Ooh. Oh, that's in the Dragon Prince? I've still not watched that. That's interesting though. Maybe I should use Uber Q's idea though. I don't know which one is better. I'll put them both and then we'll see how I feel. Alternatively, the staircase continues past the peak. I never do that right. Peak, yeah. As though to suggest it climbs into the clouds. Okay, these are all very like, these are good, but they're all very like intellectual, you know? I want some like, just some cool features, like some things like, oh man, we're trying to cross this mountain and it sucks because of this reason, you know? As opposed to like these weird, like almost fabulistic stuff. I like that. I think it's cool, and I want like a good mix. But let's try to, I want some like basic kind of meat and potatoes stuff. What are some other cool kinds of mountains or things you can encounter on mountains? What about a mountain that's like covered in scree? A scree mountain. Oh, is that their god lift up a mountain? That's true, yeah. Maybe there's like a belief that like at the top of one of these mountains is the place where one of the gods sits and waits for something, like Zamut's perch or something is kind of cool, yeah. Scree Mountain, a mountain whose sides are notoriously difficult. Goat men are notoriously difficult. Instead of goat men, I actually think that might work. I have a couple ideas there. I'll talk to you about it when I get there. To climb, not because it's steep, but because it's covered with gravel. Maybe nearby to a quarry, and all the gravel was dumped onto this mountain's slopes. That's cool. So goats. So a couple things. I think the idea of a goat mountain is great. I don't know that they are goat men, but there are two potential options. A mountain, and I like the inversion of that too. That normally they're called mountain goats, but this place is called Goat Mountain. It presumably would be in Dwarven, right? Like whatever there is a Dwarven word for goat. I forget what it is, but you know, it's Adon is the suffix that means mountain, so it's Goatadon or whatever in Dwarven. It's just like an absence, like a hole, a big like mountain-shaped gap. The notion of like a missing mountain is kind of cool. That there was once a peak here, and for some reason it's not here anymore. People attest to it, like a place like a pass that they called a missing mountain. That's kind of cool. I might put that under valleys, and say missing mountain, like a pass in between. Yeah, just called the missing mountain. Staircase is a great thought process, like the pursuit of perfection of oral knowledge. Yeah, that's kind of cool, and that's like sort of how like monks and mystics think about it, right? That like it goes on and on and on because you're never done climbing. Missing mountain. Ms. Mountain is like the arcade game version, but it's a female. Okay, missing mountain, a valley or pass that the locals claim was once a mountain, but one night it simply disappeared. Okay, Goat Mountain. A mountain favored. Yeah, can you guys see that? Yep, great. Favored by goats. By mountain goats. They're territorial. They're territorial and difficult, making them a hassle. Making them a hassle to deal with is a stupid sentence, but you understand. So to your point, Alan, about goat men, are they regular goats? Or are they lycanthropic orcs? So one of the ideas that we had was that some of the orcs that dwell in Khûm when the Seven Sorrows descended, rather than fleeing, because lycanthropy is sort of like an orcish religious practice in my world, they basically, these sort of lycanthropic orcs decided just to live as animals in order to survive. Like, they'd have better tools with the fur and teeth and whatever. Like, living as animals afforded them the ability to survive. And so the notion that like there's this, every once in a while in Khûm, you will come across an unusually intelligent cave bear or a pride of lions that hunts in a particularly sophisticated way. And if you kill one, or if you do battle with one, or try to talk to one, you discover that it's actually, it's an orc family, or it's an old orc hermit. So the notion of like a goat herd, that like maybe a lot of them are regular goats, but there's just enough of the sort of like were-goats sprinkled in that they're going to protect this as their territory. So it's not exactly goat men, but it's basically goat men. I think that's cool. Oh yeah, thanks for watching all of those, Christopher. That's awesome. I mean, obviously you still have to get to them. There's a lot to watch. So please don't feel, that you need to. But it's always welcome to have more people in the chat. Yeah, we'll be here every Sunday, so if you want to come chat. We have 15 minutes, so I would love to get 5 more mountain ideas, and then maybe we can call it. Again, they could be geographic stuff. They could be folkloric things. They can be magical or fantastic ideas. Let's see if we can get 5 more. Can y'all see that? Nope, you can't see it. I will scroll for you. Scrolling. There we go. Mountain number 1. Oh, it's being a little slow for me. Come on. There we go. Mountain number 1. Let's get 5 more mountains and then call it good. Mountain number 2. And again, the idea is that I would just have like a big list of mountains. Because some of these could be geographically tied, but I'm also okay with them just like, I'm just ready to pull a mountain out if I need a mountain for an adventure. Chances are good that I won't. But I'd like to have like just like a list of 20 random mountains. A wooden mountain. Okay, great. Mountain with just lots of types of. Oh, that's kind of cute. That like during the summer it's just very flowery. Like it's got those like alpine meadows. Yeah, a mountain known for its flowery meadows. Yeah, I like that. I like that. Like, yeah, that's a great example too, David, of just like a little tiny world building flourish that isn't going to provide an adventure for anyone. It doesn't really tell you anything about the culture, but it makes the world feel a little bit more real. You could embellish it and say that mountain is, there are people that go out and they pick flowers and there's like a festival. Like if you want to embellish it, you can, but I kind of like just like a mountain with flowers on it. It's particularly flowery. Maybe you call it something like Golden Slope or whatever, like in the summer or the spring, whenever the like sun hits them, right? It's turns the side golden. And especially beautiful mountain is kind of cool, actually, Alan. An especially beautiful mountain. I like the idea of a mountain that's basically, it's like the Matterhorn. It's like if there was a postcard for Khûm, it would be this one. The mountain hits it in a particular way. There's like a magic hour. A magic hour. Where the sun hits the peak in a particular way that all the dwarves in the area make a point of catching the sunset, right? Like it's, or the, like, what I mean? Like there's this shot, like, oh, if you stand here, then it looks like the moon, like the mountain, like cuts the sun in half, or does something like that. Poets weep. I'll put poets weep. Poets weep. Okay, let's get one that's a little nastier. These are 2 very like nice, pretty mountains. What's a mean, ugly, difficult, troublesome mountain? A mountain that carpet-begging bards show up, dwarves resent them. There's something kind of funny about that. Yeah. Good. the other tourists, right? Like, oh, coming in, it's like taking the cameras out, and they've got the like on-dune equivalent of the Mickey Mouse T-shirt, you know. Something about like sharp rocks, like jagged. These are all very physical, but like jagged rocks, sharp. Maybe it's like a smaller peak near a volcano, known for its jagged obsidian. There's a place in Tomb of Annihilation. I forget the name of it. It's called like the Canyon of Blades, and it's got like the idea is it's all these like jagged obsidian pieces. So the notion of a mountain that's like full of these like spurs that are yucky. Yeah, very sharp. Exactly. Ooh. You die on a certain mountain, you are reanimated. I don't know about reanimated, but maybe reincarnated or something like that. There's something, yeah, like like an overtly magical effect is kind of cool. A mountain of skulls. Okay, let's get these ideas down. So, near a volcano known for its jagged obsidian rocks, difficult to climb, deadly, suggested to be hungry for blood, right? Called the Bloodthirster or something like that. That's cool. Okay, if you die on a certain mountain, a mountain where if you die there, you are allegedly reanimated. Well, what if it's like, ooh, yep, okay, the Jealous Mountain. So let's talk about the Dwarven Afterlife really quickly. I got time. Oh, that's interesting, Uberq. I might do that as well. That's a good one. So the Dwarven Afterlife works like this. When you die, there are these people who come, I forget, like the Gul Kavari, I think they're called, and they collect your corpse and they bring it to this particular place, which is the Zamadan, or the Secret Mountain. And the idea is that it's like where all the dwarves first came out, right? It's like where the birthplace of the dwarves, and now it's the place they return to rest. The rumor is that Jean d'Or, which is the secret, like the hidden door that leads into Jean Hol, basically the dwarven version of Valhalla, called the Hidden Hall, is. So what about the idea of a mountain that's near to or like across the valley from the Mountain with Horrible Winds is great. Near to or across the valley from Azamadan, that they say that if you die on it, rather than being like reanimated as like a zombie or reincarnated, you know, your ghost is doomed to haunt it. That the motion is that the Jealous Mountain wants to keep its own souls, right? It doesn't want to give the souls of the dead back to the actual to the Zamadan. Yeah. Rumor says if you die on this mountain, it keeps your soul, and you wander the slopes as a wailing ghost. Yeah, that's cool. True or not? Who knows? Okay. There's a term. I want to do this thing. There could be a mountain that is the first to block the clouds and gets most. Ooh, like a mountain that like scythes the clouds, right? So like the clouds come through, right? Like it's tall enough, and it's like maybe there's a wind pattern that moves in from the east or whatever, the west, and it like cuts the clouds in half and has a tendency to like spill rain. It scythes the clouds, and they call it like the axe blade or something like that. That's kind of cool. I think you can even make those two different mountains. That's how hungry I am for ideas. Mountain number 6 is a mountain with frequent mudslides. What's nice about these mountains is that like the way the Dwarven language works, and then we'll do a mountain with horrible winds. We still have 10 minutes. Let's just keep churning these out. If you guys still got more mountain ideas, hit me with them. A mountain that howls with horrible winds, that knock travelers or climbers to their doom. I like the idea of a mountain. It's kind of like the goats, but a mountain that is the territory. Oh, you guys probably can't see. I'll scroll. Sorry, it's going so fast. There we go. That is the territory of a particularly fierce monster. So this is what's tricky about this, is I think that, like, that seems like an obvious one, but you have to pick, like, the right kind of monster. So dragons already have a role in the campaign. You know, it's like, this is the mountain where a dragon lives, is kind of basic. My instinct, yeah, is that it's like an animal, you know, like, again, like a cave bear or something along those lines. That it's something that, like, ostensibly isn't that deadly, but kind of has a reputation in the area. I kind of want it to be like a basilisk or a behir or like something like that, you know? I'm not sure what. Like the type of monster needs to be very particular. Like a manticore or I kind of like it better if it's an animal. Maybe an animal? Cave bear? You know? They call it Bear Mountain or whatever. Yeah, we have 3 volcanoes as far as I know, Alan, but thank you for checking. We need a mountain where the giant eagles live. That's just another note for me, basically. Mountain number 10. A mountain where the giant eagles in the rock live. I think the giant eagles in Khûm are really cool. The idea is that they're allies and they're like friendly, but there's no common language. Like nobody can communicate across because the eagles don't really speak. So you can't really use comprehend languages because the eagles don't have a language. But they're still like basically creatures of good, and they're trying to help out the dwarves, but there's a lot of miscommunication between them. There's a fun plot element in the game where, I don't know if you can hear that, my wife is cooking in the kitchen right next to me, so we have to call this early. But there's a plot element where these dragons show up in Khûm and start kind of terrorizing the area, right? They feel like a power vacuum. And they're kind of present this problem to the eagles because these giant eagles look like easy prey to these dragons. And so what they do is they fly off to some remote part of the world and they come back with a roc's egg and they raise it like a cuckoo, right? Like they take it in their own nest and they raise it as their own. And then now when the rock grows up, they have a giant bird to protect them from these dragons, right? And there's something about that that feels A, very avian, and B, very like what an intelligent bird would do, right? And the rock live. Oh, that's good. I hope it's not too loud. I don't know what was going on with the Fast and the Furious earlier. A mountain where they say all the lost things supposedly end up. It's kind of cool. Maybe that's like a valley, you know? Because it feels to me more like it would fall down, right? Like if you dropped it or you lost it, it would be like scattered there. Yeah, I have an idea. That's cool. Let's do this. A very smooth or a polished mountain? That's kind of cool. A mountain, let's do that really quick. A mountain with like one polished side, right? Like it's called Windbreak Mountain or something like that, right? Like Windbreak Mountain. That's been smoothed on one side, where terrible winds gust around it. Yeah, that's kind of neat. We have a couple mountains that like kind of gleam in the sun already, so I don't want to double dip. But let's do, yeah, and that side, yeah, that's cool. Extremely difficult to climb. Climb that side. Yeah, that's cool. Maybe, ooh, I got an idea. A local custom is to slide down the polished side on a toboggan or something. The polished side on a toboggan. Yeah, I was just gonna say, like, is it, how do you spell toboggan? Is that right? Toboggan? I don't know. Oh, there we go. Near the Howling Mountain. I'd be curious, like, where are these winds? You know, I'll have to find a good spot for them. So under valleys, I liked the idea of, okay, this is a little bit historical, but Valley of the Lost. A valley full of decrepit junk and broken statuary. a valley full. It is adjacent to Glimmergem Hold. I'll just call it 10 pillars. 10 pillars. So one of the clans in an ancient war, here, let me just get this down. Maybe you guys can't see that. You can't see it. I'll scroll it. So doing valleys. Thank you. Where all the dwarven, all the clans' junk was basically thrown out. Was thrown out and now litters the ground below. Local rumor says that if you lost something, it's probably in the, whatever we call it, Valley of the Lost. But I like the idea that, so there was this ancient clan, the Glimmer Gems, that tried to overthrow the royal clan, and they were like Grains of Castamere style, obliterated, and their entire hold was basically scraped clean, and there's nothing left. And I like the idea that, like, on the backside of that mountain where they used to live, there's this valley that's full of, like, broken statues, and, like, all the old furniture has rotted away, but all the stone has remained and been worn away by time. And so the rumor is, right, as you say, David, that, like, if you've lost something, like, that's where you're supposed to go look. Have you checked the Valley of the Lost, right? Like, your stuff doesn't actually end up there, but that's kind of the belief, right? The folkloric belief. Oh, hey, what's up, Brent? That's cool. I like the idea of, like, a mountain kind of defined by an event like that. Ooh, yeah, what about, I think I want to, like, oh, that's cool too, Chris. Let me put that in there. Dwarves challenge one another to climb the polished slope. Another to climb the polished slope. I think we do a thing, Brent. That's a cool idea. I'll do it like this. And then I'll go. Cha. Okay, this is gonna be the last one. Get your last mountain ideas out now, because we're about to call it. Mountain number 12. Okay, so a mountain that eats miners. That eats miners. Like an ancient group, like whenever they send somebody in, like every few centuries, a Thane decides to mine the mountain again, and it always collapses or ends in disaster. Sorry about all the typos, folks. It's very hard to read at this distance. Called the Hungry Mountain. Right? That, like, because if it's just one, I was just thinking about that, Alan. I was like, this is the soccer team. Yeah, I like the idea that, like, it was just one, okay, mining accidents happen, but I like the sort of avarice of every few generations, right? They send another mining expedition in there, like, well, there's good ore in there, and then of course something happens again, right? Like, and then the rumor becomes that, like, the mountain has developed a taste for dwarven miners. Yeah, great. Well, that's 7:58, everybody. I think we're gonna call it there. That was awesome. Some really great cave work, and so, look at all these mountains we came up with. That's what, 12 new mountains? Well, more than that. That's almost 20. Like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Yeah, 20 more mountains. Pretty good, I feel like. I mean, I want to have a huge list, but we had talked about having 20, right? That I can just pull from at any time. So it's kind of cool that we came up with 20 of them right here. Great, so we'll be back next week. I think next week is going to be monsters, so we'll probably just go down my list and try to flesh out and kind of re-flavor all the monsters that appear. That are normally sort of mountain or tundra or underground monsters, and I want to kind of put a new spin on them. Because there's all these monsters from old editions that are just like, this is a stone scorpion. And that's the extent of it. It's like, well, why does it exist, and where did it come from, and, like, how does it work, and what are some stories you can tell about the stone scorpion? Stone Scorpion definitely sounds like the name of a character in a kung fu movie. So if it doesn't exist already, I'm going to claim that for when I inevitably, move to Nepal and become a kung fu master. Great, thanks everybody for coming to the stream. We'll be back next Sunday with another world building stream. Really appreciate everybody coming out. This is awesome because, I wasn't sure if it was going to work from my apartment. And it seems to work just fine. Maybe there's a little bit of a delay. I'll have to watch it later and see how bad it is. But it seems like it was pretty successful. That's heartening for me.